Everybody invited to do whatever they wish during this trip. Okay, and I say this trip because we're about to travel.
Yep.
Okay, so let me just get this ready. The Zoom, the Skype, all these things that we need to learn. Okay, one moment. Okay, all recording, face mask. Okay, everybody's ready. Okay, hi everybody. So today I made a mistake in the sense of I should have taken a week and not had a lecture today so that I could get lots of different speakers. But I didn't do that. So I'll start off the speaking, and if anybody wants to tag along, at the end of each story, I'll say, will anyone want to tell a story? And you'll have that option if you want to ad lib, spontaneous, take us on a journey of your own, if you would like to. If not, don't worry, I have enough stories to tell. I was once upon a time writing an autobiography, which I still at some point. I'm just going to mute everybody. Everybody, of course, wants to unmute themselves and say anything at any point, you're welcome. And I came up with 90, I think it was 96 stories that I wanted to put into my book, which one day I will hopefully do. But here are 4 of them, which, again, this is coming from myself as an educator. So I'm trying to portray certain lessons that I believe in and that I'd like you to think about, or invite you to think about. But if you yourself are a presenter in the future, in the next 4 sessions, which I already have 2 speakers, feel free to do whatever you want and take us on the journey that you would like to take us. Because this is the Travel Story series. Everyone learns something different from travel and from life in general. So, you have that room to go wherever you want to. Okay, let's begin. First of all, it's an introduction. What does travel mean? So there is 2 major categories of travel. There's inner travel and there's outer travel. And I don't know what people spend more money on. Do people spend more money on going to Mauritius and Australia? Or do they spend more money on psychologists and therapists and education and all other types of things? I'm not 100% sure. What I do know is that the extremes are very great. There have been very many spiritual healers who say things along the lines of, travel is a waste of time, it's a waste of money, you don't need to go anywhere to find yourself, and you're just wasting, you're going the long path to where you could go right now. On the other hand, you have other perspectives who say statements that they've grown the most from their travels, and I'm going to be sharing a few of those statements with you soon. And I see this dichotomy a little bit the same as the stories of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden versus Abraham. So Adam and Eve were not meant to travel. They were meant to be in the Garden of Eden and tend the Garden of Eden. Their location is specific. They were meant to do a certain task, and they were meant to delight in the paradise of God. So there, it seems that the ideal was to be stay put, stay on your tush, work hard, and enjoy life. On the other hand, many generations later, we learn that humanity was changed by this man, Abraham. Go to yourself. Go to the place that I will show you, the place of your, leave your father's house, your country, etc., 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 and go to the place that I will show you, which Abraham didn't even know where he was going. So that, to me, is the battle in the Torah between the internal traveler, who is Adam and Eve, versus the external traveler, who is Abraham. And both of them find, spirituality. I mean, Adam and Eve are talking to God, Abraham's talking to God, and each of us have our own path in terms of how we found ourselves in the world. Although I just quoted many spiritual healers say traveling is a waste of time, Maimonides, who's the big rationalist from the Jewish circles, he seems to say that travel is a wonderful thing. It's a necessity to bring you to love and fear God. So when it says in the Torah, love God, in the Shema, love God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might, how do you come to love God? One of the things that Maimonides says is go through traveling, go see the world, and you will realize your minutiae in relation to everything else, and that will bring you to an understanding of your position in the world, and that is knowledge that is worthwhile having. So I know that I'm not the first rabbi to say that traveling is a good thing. I am probably one of the first rabbis to travel the way that I've done. There hasn't been a lot of people on this planet that have traveled similar to myself. And I can't say I'm proud of it or not proud of it. It's just something that I did. And I'm going to share some of those stories with you now. Last thing I'm going to say is when it comes to travel, the New York Times quoted in January, from the January 21st edition, someone sent it to me recently, that traveling is changing a lot in the modern era. In the past, people were much more focused on luxury and on, going to a resort and having a luxurious, pampered experience. Whereas today, the trend, or they call it a mega trend, the mega trend in travel is to go and have experiences of the world, life-changing experiences. That's what young people want to do. And like one of my friends in San Diego once pointed out, who's from a very, very wealthy family. So he says, me and my brother, we're different. So my friend is the hippie one. He says, me and my brother are different. Again, this is my friend speaking. He says, my brother, he lives in the wealthy neighborhood and he likes to only sleep under 5 stars. Whereas I like to be in a tent and sleep under the stars. And yes, that's different types of people on this planet, the 5 stars versus the stars. And I'll share with you some of those stories from my perspective of my travels and things that I was interested in. Okay, I'm going to try to share my screen with you. I'm not going to share pictures, unfortunately, because they're on another, but I will share some quotes that I'm going to be using. Okay, let's just see if this actually works. Okay, I'm sharing my screen. Oh, sorry, I did the wrong thing. 1 second, share photo. Okay, I guess I can share screen. Let's try this. Give me 1 moment. Okie dokie, 3, 2, 1. Okay, you should see my screen in a second. So I'm just going to go to my section. Okay, so here we go. First of all, Maimonides quote. But how may one discover the way to love and fear him? When man will reflect concerning his works and his great and wonderful creatures, and will behold through them his wonderful, matchless, and infinite wisdom, he will be spontaneously filled with love, praise, and exaltation, and become possessed of a great longing to know the great name. And then I'm going to skip. He will be taken aback in a moment and stricken with awe and realize that he is an infinitesimal creature, humble and dark, standing with an insignificant and slight knowledge in the presence of the all-wise. Okay, so there the Maimonides is saying, you need to know your position in nature to really appreciate love of God. Let's go to J.R.R. Tolkien. Okay, where is J.R.R. Tolkien? Here we go. Not all those who wander are lost. Okay, let's think about that. Not all those who wander are lost. I'm going back to my Zoom. Stop the share. Okay. Let me tell you a story that happened to me and my sister. So some of you might know my sister. If any of you are in Johannesburg, my sister is a GP in Johannesburg in Ilovo at a family practice with lots of Jewish clients from Ilovo, Sandton, Waverley, all those types of areas that maybe some of you grew up in. I'm not advertising for her. She doesn't need advertising. She's got so many people coming, but she is a doctor there. And she took off time from her medical degree to come and visit me before she was married. I was not married, she was not married, I was living in San Diego. And I took off some time off work. I think I was working in marketing at the time, and I took off some time. And she arrived from South Africa to San Diego. Now, whoever is not a traveler, just to let you know, the one trip that you do not want to do in your life on an airplane is from South Africa to California, because that is one of the longest flights that you can imagine. I think it used to be, today the airplanes go faster and longer, but I remember that there was a time that the longest commercial plane ride in the world was from Johannesburg to New York. And here you've got to still get to California. So she's schlepped, from her busy medical degree, in the middle of all her, 5 years of study. She takes off 2 weeks. She comes to see her brother living in San Diego, who's taken time off work. What has her brother planned for his sister? Well, the answer is nothing. Okay. Nothing. I had not prepared anything, but I had prepared a question. And the question was, she arrived in San Diego, and I said, Vix, north, east, or south? Now, whoever knows the map where San Diego is, it's on the Pacific coast. So you can't go west, that's the ocean. But we could go south into Mexico and travel Mexico for 2 weeks. We could go north, which I planned to do the Californian coast and come down the California through places like Yosemite and Sequoia National Park and Kings Canyon National Park and other places like that, if you know California. And east was to go through Nevada into Utah and back. So she said to me, I don't know, let's go east. Okay, I know that there's a song, Go West, Life is Peaceful There by Pet Shop Boys. But she went east like a good Jewish person facing Mizrach, which has always been the way that the Jewish people faced east towards Jerusalem. Even when they were west, they always dreamed towards the east. So we went east. Now, I had a 2-week itinerary planned. Once she chose east, I figured out where we would go. Turns out we go on Christmas Eve. That's the day we start our travel. We're driving, we go through Anza Borrego Desert, which is a beautiful desert 2 hours east of San Diego. We hit the Salton Sea. It's a beautiful big lake, very polluted, but very nice looking against the mountains. Kind of looks like the Dead Sea, except it's the Californian version. And now we're on our way to Joshua Tree to sleep under the stars in Joshua Tree National Park. Little does this rabbi know that don't go past Palm Springs on Christmas Eve in the United States. Okay, do not do that. We got caught in a traffic jam with tens of thousands of cars. Not hundreds, not thousands, tens of thousands of cars. It's a 4-way highway, bumper to bumper. We have not moved more than 100 meters in an hour. And I'm saying to myself, Vicky, I'm so sorry, you've schlepped all the way here. What can I do? I can't go anywhere. And then I look to the side of the road, and there's no barricades or anything like that. It's just this meadow, and it's probably about a 30-meter meadow, flat, between our 4 lanes of bumper-to-bumper traffic and the other direction where there's no cars leaving Palm Springs. Everybody's going to Palm Springs. So, I'm a chochem. I've studied in yeshiva for lots of years. I did a mathematical degree as my major. Oh yeah, let's get clever. Why don't I just go in the other direction? I don't have to sleep in Joshua Tree tonight. I can sleep anywhere. Let me just go across the 30 meters and go back to the Anza Borrego Desert. That was after waiting, for about an hour in traffic. So I'm going to do it. Boom, I veer off my car. It's a Volkswagen Jetta. I don't make it more than 3 meters before I'm stuck in half a meter of mud in the car. Can't move the wheels left or right, nowhere to go. Not even, I can't even step out the car. I can hardly open the door. 10,000 people laughing at me as they drive past. 10,000 for 3 hours. For 3 hours, cars looking at me going, how, you didn't think that all of us thought the same thing? You didn't think that 10,000, 20, 50,000 of us also were in traffic thinking, why don't we go into the meadow and go back? So I was the only chochem who did it, and everybody laughed at me. I just, it was fun for the first hour just looking at them. I'm probably about 4 meters from them. I'm right in the mud, right next to them. So we call AAA, which is like AA here. It took, I don't know, 2 to 3 hours for them to come after all the traffic had finished. Finally, they arrived at us. They take us out of the traffic. It's 11 p.m. We've been there since 5. It's 11 p.m. My sister's sleeping in the car. I'm saying to myself, oy vey, what a start to our travels. I look on my cell phone on a website, hotels.com. The closest place to sleep, that's where I'm sleeping tonight. I don't care where it is. I see a place in Palm Springs. It's not my place that I wanted to go. I wanted to go an hour north of there to Joshua Tree. I don't care. I look, I don't know the address. I put it in my GPS and I drive there. 45 minutes later, I'm in Palm Springs and my sister's still sleeping. And she's probably from jet lag. And at the corner of my eyes, I'm now very tired. I mean, I've been waiting in traffic, in the mud, frustrated, swearing at myself, etc., etc. Out of the corner of my eye, it seemed to me that I saw Hasidic Jews walking in the streets. Now, I didn't pay too much attention. I just continued driving. Another 200, 300 meters ahead, I see more Hasidic Jews. This time I look and I notice that there's Hasidic Jews. Like, what is going on? I'm in the middle of nowhere in Palm Springs. I've just seen 2 groups of Hasidic Jews. With the payers, the furry hats, the coats, the slippers, the whole thing. Then I arrive at my hotel. My hotel is on the corner of the street that I GPSed and Chabad Street. The street's name is Chabad Street and the name of the road that I put into my GPS. Turns out I'm staying at a hotel, the only hotel, it's an inn, it's more like a motel, across the road from the Chabad of Palm Springs. On the weekend, that 2 Hasidic rabbis from Brooklyn have brought thousands of students with them from New York, spending the weekend at Chabad of Palm Springs. I showed my sister this. When we arrived at 11 p.m., we went to a night fair in Palm Springs. There were like 1,000 people. 700 of them were Hasidim, okay? We decided to stay the next day just to see what this event was. And the next day was a Friday, so we ended up staying for Shabbat as well, where we met 2 Hasidic rabbis. We sat next to them with another couple of thousand Hasidim. And that was one of my sister's highlights of the trip, to be in the middle of nowhere where we weren't meant to be there. We ended up being with, thousands of Hasidic people in the middle of nowhere. What can I learn from that story? Number one is you never know how things are going to plan out. Don't stress out over things that go wrong, because you never know, how things can twist. There's a verse from Proverbs chapter 19, which says, Rabot machshavot belev ish, v'atzat Hashem hitako. You say it in the morning prayers every day. A person has many thoughts in the heart, but the counsel of God is what endures. I know that there's a Yiddish expression, something like, man plans and God laughs, something like that. And that was my story, where God was planning and I was crying. But at the end, I was laughing as well, just because it turned out that I would never have had such an experience in my whole life, were it not for the fact that I got stuck in the mud. Okay, that is story number one. Story number two. Okay, okay, I'll go for one more story and then I'll open it up. Okay. Story number two. Quite a few. Okay, story number two. This is to do with actually prejudice. Okay, so I'm not going to quote you. I'm not going to go back to that quote because we're running out of time. But there is a quote, a Russian proverb, which says, "It is better to see something once." So travel is fatal to prejudice, bigotry, and narrow-mindedness. I'll read that again. Travel is fatal to prejudice, bigotry, and narrow-mindedness, meaning the more you travel, the less narrow-minded you become. This story shows narrow-mindedness. And because of this narrow-mindedness, it opened me up to not be narrow-minded. You're not going to believe the story. So I am traveling in Thailand, and I get a call from my religious cousin who lives in Miami. Ultra-Orthodox religious cousin. And he says to me, "Ryan, I'd like you to take my son to a festival in the Ukraine." Excuse me? Yes, it is a festival on Rosh Hashanah. And my son is going through all different issues with faith. And he's rebelled, and he's doing this and that, and blah, blah, blah. You're the one person that I feel might be able to bring him to the fold, so to speak, and influence him. And I want you to take him to this festival in the Ukraine. I said, "Excuse me, I'm right now in Thailand drinking a tequila on the beach. Why are you calling me?" "Yes, the festival's in 3 weeks' time, and Rosh Hashanah is in 3 weeks' time, and you need to be in a shul for Rosh Hashanah, Ryan, don't you know? So I want you to take my son to the Ukraine." I'm like, "Okay, fine. I'll meet him in Ukraine for Rosh Hashanah." No, Ryan. You're not going to meet him in Ukraine. My son's 16 years old. You're going to pick him up from Miami, and you're going to take him to the Ukraine. "Oh, okay, fine. For you, I'll do it. You're my cousin. I love you. I'll do it." So I've got to travel. Whoever knows the map, around the world, Thailand, around the world, across the whole of the Pacific Ocean, across America, to arrive in Miami for 4 hours, to pick up my cousin, to take him around across the Atlantic Ocean, across Europe to the Ukraine. So I take him to the Ukraine. What is this festival? So this is Rav Nachman of Breslov, who was a Rabbi in the 1700s, a Hasidic Rabbi, apparently wrote that whoever visits his grave on Rosh Hashanah, he himself will pray on those people's behalf. Turns out it's not one or two families that go to see this person who died in the 1700s, who said, "Come to visit me in Rosh Hashanah." It's 50,000 people from around the world, mostly Israel. I would venture to say that it's the largest Rosh Hashanah gathering in the world. I can't see any other Rosh Hashanah even being close, including the Western Wall, not even close to how many people there are at this festival called Uman Ukraine Rosh Hashanah. Okay, so we get there. Now, who's there? So there are, I'd say, 45,000 Hasidim, maybe 40,000 Hasidim. The last 10,000 are not Hasidim, but mostly religious. There are a few thousand people who are not outwardly religious, but they're still there. To give you an idea of the amazing things that you're going to see with your buys if you ever go to such an experience. The catering is free. Let me say that again. The catering is free for 50,000 people for a week. Can you understand the amounts of donations going on there? Can you understand we're not talking $3 a meal. We're talking over Rosh Hashanah, 3-4 course meals, exactly like you'd have at home. Catered from caterers, brought in mass to cater for 50,000 people for a week over Rosh Hashanah. Most people stay for a week. I stayed for about 4 or 5 days. It's donation based. So I paid the donation for the food. It's not a lot. It's like $100 for the week. Many people don't. There are so many hippie Hasidic Jews there. When I say hippie Hasidic Jews, meaning people who have bought one-way tickets. They don't even know how long they're going to stay. At the end of the function, at the end of the week, there are tens of people begging, and I'm not saying this is a good thing. I think it's terribly irresponsible. But tens of people begging, please, we don't have money to go home. Please, can you spare a few dollars so we can buy tickets to go home to Israel, America, London, Paris, South Africa, wherever people are coming from. Okay, I meet this one guy from South Africa. He's a South African from Johannesburg that I hadn't seen in 15 years. And I said, oh, Shmuley, haven't seen you in 15 years. Wow, how are you? Crazy that we're meeting here in the Ukraine. Crazy, crazy. Where are you staying? There's a wheelbarrow next to him. That's where I'm staying. What do you mean that's where you stay? Yeah, I've slept in the wheelbarrow the last 3 nights. That's the hippie that I'm talking about. So when everybody's thinking about stereotype Hasidim, religious, I'm trying to break those barriers right now because there are very many different types of people at this particular thing, all extremely ultra-Orthodox religious, or at least 90% of them. Okay, now let's get to the story. That was just a preface to the story. So first day Rosh Hashanah. I'm staying with this one guy. His name's Hili. It's not important what his last name is. Also super duper Hasidic religious. He lives in Ramat Beit Shemesh in Israel, whoever's from Israel. So I've never met him. I'm just staying at his apartment that he rents every year. He had 2 beds available, and myself and my cousin have rented 2 beds in a 2-bedroom apartment. So it's 2 beds in the 1 bedroom, 2 beds in the other bedroom, all men. Those 2 guys are married. Myself and my cousin are not married, and we are there for the week. Hili tells me, which minyan are you going to tomorrow morning, Rosh Hashanah morning? I'm like, I don't know which minyan I'm going to. He says, are you going to the main minyan? I said, I don't know. What is it? He says, well, there's 10,000 people. It's a 10,000 person minyan. Yeah, you just heard me right. 10,000 people. It's a 10,000 person minyan. It starts at 7 in the morning and it ends at 3. Are you going to that minyan? Definitely not. Definitely not. Okay, there's no ways I'm going to stay in the shul for that long from 7 to 3. No, I think I'd shoot myself after that many hours. My concentration span is not like that. Okay, so which one are you going to? I'm going to go to one of the other ones which are shorter. It turns out the one that I went to ended at 1, like South Africa does anyway. So it was long regardless, but it wasn't like ending at 3 or 4. So he says to me, okay, please do me a favor. Can you start the barbecue at about 2? Because we'll finish at about 3. I'll only be home at about 3:30. Can you start the barbecue? And again, whoever knows Jewish law, you're allowed to have a barbecue in your Yom Tov as long as it's from a pre-existing flame, according to halacha. So he asked me to start the barbecue from a pre-existing flame that we had lit. And by the time he comes, he can put on the meat that he's brought with him from Israel. Yeah, sure, Hili, no problem. So my cousin and I, we finish our minyan and we start the barbecue. And we're just enjoying it. It's, it's quite cold in Ukraine, but we're enjoying it outside. It's sunny. And someone comes into the garden. Now we're staying in an apartment block, and there's a little garden in the apartment block. So we're doing the barbecue in the apartment block, in the garden of the apartment block. So one man comes to me, he must be 60 years old, I'd say in his 50s or 60s, early 60s. Comes up to me, starts shouting at me in Ukrainian language. I look at him. I'm sorry, I don't understand what you're saying. I'm sorry. He walks up to my face, shouts at me in my face. I'm sorry, sir, English. Do you speak English? He comes up to me, like a fight, 3 inches, his nose from my nose, shouting. I see hatred in his eyes. I thought he's going to hit me. I thought he's going to try and kill me. I said to my cousin, I don't need this in my life. Hilly can make his own barbecue. So I stopped the barbecue making right then and there, and I went inside with my cousin. Hilly arrives at 3, as he said. Ryan, why don't you start the barbecue? No, there's this man, he shouted at me, Oh, that man, he's crazy, he's the next door neighbor upstairs. I've been given permission to do the barbecue in the building. Don't worry about him, I'm gonna go and do it. I'm like, okay, great, go and do the barbecue. So he's there. 20 minutes later, we hear a gunshot. The gunshot was outside our window, as if someone had shot within 10 meters of our heads. I got such a shock, even though I had heard a gunshot before. I got such a shock, I went frozen. My cousin Eitan, who's 16, and a lot of adrenaline and a lot of excitement, immediately ran out the door. Eitan, don't go, don't go, don't go. Before, already gone. Turns out, this Ukrainian man came down after he had shouted at me, after this Hilly again tried to do it. Took his gun, shot at Hilly, a warning shot that missed Hilly's head by a foot, ricocheted off the back wall into the plants, which easily could have ricocheted into Eitan or I in the building. We were just separated by glass. And Hilly comes running into the room with Eitan. Lock the doors, lock the doors. 5 minutes later, no, maybe I'm being a bit, maybe 7, 8 minutes later, a team of 6 SWAT team. If whoever knows what a SWAT team looks like, SWAT team, the things over their heads, the padding on the legs, 6 of them from the Ukrainian army with another 4 Israeli policemen dressed in Israeli police uniform, Mishtara Yisrael, who Israel obviously sends to the Ukraine to protect Israeli citizens. Unbelievable. Okay, there's Israeli police in the Ukraine for this festival. Sorry, everybody, just to let you know, this man has been detained. He's now in jail. There won't be any more problems from him. You can have your barbecue. That was my experience of Rosh Hashanah in Ukraine, trying to, relax with the hippies, the hippie Hasidic Jews, except it turned out into a gunfight. And the lesson that I want to share with that is not that you should go to the Ukraine or that you shouldn't go to the Ukraine for Rosh Hashanah, because it is a once-in-a-lifetime experience, whoever wants to do such a thing. But what I wanted to say is that when you see hatred, when you see prejudice, some people react to that as forwarding the prejudice onto others. But for me, that was one of the first times in my life, maybe the only time in my life, that I've felt that negativity of one human being to another, where there was really a malicious intent of hurt. And when you feel that, for me, it showed me how I would never, ever want to show that to anybody else. And that's from the parsha coming up, Parshat Balak, where it says, Balak says, perhaps you, Bilam, can curse this people, the Jewish people, and chase them away from our land. There's been prejudice from the times of the Torah and before that. There is still prejudice. When you see that prejudice in your eyes, I mean, for me, it was life and death almost. I mean, I could have been me, Hilly, if I hadn't moved inside. That's where you know that you don't forward on that prejudice, because there was no reason for someone to shoot a gun at another person for having a barbecue in a communal garden. Okay, so that is another travel story. So one was, a very happy ending. Another one was a very scary ending, but still it taught me something about how not to be prejudiced. And that's why when you travel and you either meet amazing people and you learn why not to be bigoted, or you meet not such amazing people and you also learn not to be like them. Okay, now would anyone like to tag on me for just one story? If anyone has anything or any comments on either story, I've got one more story I can share for today, but I'll just go silent for 10 seconds if anyone wants to share any particular story. Okay, now I know that my stories are quite intense and quite out there, and because I have had these kind of experiences. Some people, they don't have these experiences. Okay, someone's saying more from me. Okay, does anyone want to? Okay, Gilda, I love you also. Okay, so lastly, Gilda, whoever just said that, I could tell stories about your nephew, but I don't know if they're appropriate to all the crowd over here. I'm just kidding. Most of them are. Okay, last one. This is quite like a neutral story. It's not so drastic or anything like that, but that's why I'm ending off with this one, because the first two were quite drastic. This one's not so drastic, but there is quite a lot to learn from it as well. So when I was a rabbi in San Diego, as a rabbi, you often get people calling you with all different types of problems, issues, challenges going on. And it just comes with the territory, because people who are in need, they often run out of avenues to talk to. They've already gone to their parents, they've already gone to their friends for help, they've already been denied, they've already been this, they've already wasted, they've already gambled it away, they've already spent it on drugs, whatever it is. Some of them, if they're brave enough and if they're close enough to the rabbi, will come to the rabbi and ask, for some type of help. So here was someone who was going through a very bad divorce. And I don't want to go through the whole ins and outs of it, but the person, this person lost all his money through the divorce. And he didn't have enough money to pay rent. He asked me, if he could come stay for the weekend, and it ended up being over 6 months. Okay, fair enough. I want to help you. I've got a spare room. You're welcome to stay with me. I like your company. We're friends. What an amazing opportunity to help you. Thank God I'm in a position that I've got a spare room. Okay. Now, this person didn't have money, but he did have points on his credit card from when he did have money. So he said to me, Rabbi, I can't give you money. I can't give you rent, but I can buy you a ticket to anywhere you want to go in the world. Maybe a few tickets. So it turns out he ended up buying me a ticket to Peru and another ticket to Japan. Those were the two countries that I chose him to buy me a ticket to. So I'm telling you a story of Japan. I arrived in Japan, again, with no plans. That seems to be a theme, okay? Most of my travels, I arrived without a plan. It drove my mother crazy. When I went to India from Johannesburg, my mother forced me to make plans because she had been to India and she said, I'm not letting you arrive in Mumbai without plans. So she forced me to make plans when I arrived in India. But The rest of my travels, when I was going from one country to another, other than from leaving Johannesburg, I didn't normally plan. That was just what I wanted. I just kind of was testing my faith with God, or not testing my faith. I just had faith. So I just went with things are going to be okay. So I arrive in Japan and I come out of the tunnel. Now, this is not Tokyo. This is a place called Fukuoka, which is another precinct of Japan. It's kind of like West Japan, closer to places like Nagasaki and Hiroshima. And Fukuoka, I arrive, I go through the thing, go through passport control, and the first thing that I see is a Japanese TV station with a huge camera and an interviewer who walks straight towards me in broken English. Excuse me, sir. And again, I'm not mocking the accent. I'm trying to do like a fake Japanese accent. Excuse me, sir. Can we interview you? You're a new traveler. Yes, you can interview me. You know, where's your bags? No, this is my bag. Okay, this little backpack. This is my bag. Oh, where are you going to travel? Don't know. Excuse me? Where are you going now? I'm not sure. Excuse me? So now the interviewer says to the cameraman, excuse me for a moment, we need to take this one aside. So I'm like, okay, what's the deal? She's like, we've never had a traveler out of all the people we've interviewed. We've never had a traveler that we've interviewed, and we've interviewed hundreds. We're doing a program of travelers for the state of this particular state of Japan. We've never had someone who's arrived without plans. How does that work? So it was an hour interview. So I was on Japanese TV for an hour. That was my first landing in Japan. Rabbi Ryan, live TV of Japanese. What is it to have a traveler coming without plans? I was explaining to them, well, this is where I've traveled before, and this is how it works, and it's quite exciting, and blah, 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 blah. And after that whole talk, you know, so, you know, I got seen by God knows how many thousands of people in Japan before I even had seen the land of Japan, because I was still in the airport. I decided of why not actually make some plans? Because, you know, now I'm getting a little bit, uptight, a little bit anxious. They've been drilling me for 45 minutes that you should have plans. So maybe I should go get some plans. So I decided to go to the tourist information in the airport. And I said, hi, you know, I'm from America, because that's where I was living at the time. What can I do? What should I do? I've got 8 days. What should I do? So they say, well, what do you like? Well, I love nature. I love islands. I love hot springs. I love this. I love that, blah, blah, blah. Oh, you should go south to Kagoshima and take the ferry to the Okinawa Islands. Wow, that sounds amazing. I spent 45 minutes with them at the information center going through a full 8-day itinerary. Thank you so much, Japanese Tourist Information Center. You've helped me with my trip, blah, 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 blah. Now I'm going to go and find a place to sleep. Okay, find a place to sleep. I wake up the next morning, early in the morning. I ask them, where do I go to get the train to go to Kagoshima? You go here, you walk here, blah, blah, blah. Okay, I get to the travel station. As I'm going through the security, you know, where you pay your ticket and you have, you know, the thing turns and you go through, my train to Kagoshima leaves. I must have missed the train by not more than 10 seconds. When's the next train? An hour's time. An hour's time. I don't have time to wait for a train for an hour. I've only got 8 days. I got on the next train to go north, not knowing where. I just jumped on the next train in the opposite direction. Why? I just didn't feel like waiting the hour. Turns out that I had the most amazing experience in Japan. I met a friend of mine from King David, who I think was the first Japanese graduate of the King David school system, who is one of the only Japanese people in Japan who speaks Hebrew and works with the Israeli government, with Japan. And I went through her whole life, what she sees in Japan, in terms of Tokyo, as well as Hiroshima and Kyoto and, the Eastern Peninsula. You can see a lot in Japan because they got speed trains. So you can do crazy amounts of distance in short amounts of time. What's the lesson from that story? Lesson from that story is it's better to travel well than to arrive. I'll say that again. It's better to travel well than to arrive. That was said by a somewhat famous man who's known as the Buddha. And I was always told that the Buddha was against travel. But here he's saying it's not about where you arrive, the destination. It's about the process of the travel. So for me, many people, they go on travels and they fret. Did I bring this? Did I bring that? Where am I going to get this? Where am I going to get that? How am I going to be able to do this and do that? And it turns out that like traveling is a lot of work and effort and anxiety and stress. And I'm not trying to say that it's not a lot of work, because it is a lot of work to travel. To be out of your comfort zone is a fortune of work. But it doesn't have to come with the stress, because I gave up 45 minutes of listening to the Japanese of an 8-day itinerary because I missed a train by 10 seconds. And I anyway had the most amazing trip in Japan, which whoever hasn't been to Japan, it's like visiting another universe. You don't even feel like you're on planet Earth in some ways. It's not like going to London or Czechoslovakia. It is that different. And that was what the Buddha said. And the Parsha also says a similar thing in the Torah. It says, Re'eh anochi noten lifnechem hayom bracha ukalala, the beginning of Parshat Re'eh. Behold, I set before you a blessing and a curse. But I left out a word when I translated it. See, I've set before you today a blessing and a curse. And that today, that word today, is the crucial word. Because every day is a blessing or a curse. You can look at it as, I missed the train, I'm going to have to wait another hour, boring, I'm excited, I just want to go, Or you can just get on the next train and make your own destiny. Because today, right now, in the moment, that potential for blessing is always, always there. And that's the message I want to leave you with, is when it comes to travel, whether you decide to travel outside, meaning you go to Cape Town, Muizenberg, France, Singapore, all that external, or alternatively, you're not that person, or you may be not that age of traveling, and you're now focusing on the travel inside you, which means looking through your memoirs, reminiscing, thinking about the future of your children and grandchildren, and going through all that internal, possible anxiety and stress and joy and celebration and all those types of things. So whether it's external or internal, the time for travel is now, because the blessing is always there. And that's the theme that I want to leave you with, is that, wherever people decide to travel, and that's why traveling to some people, it's kind of like a foreign idea, because to them, traveling is, going to Durban at the end of the year. But really, there's always potential for travel of the soul, whether it's external or internal, and the time is now, the power of now, hayom, bracha uklala. It's how you see the day as it is. And thank you everyone for being here. That is travel series number 1. Next week, we're going to have different speakers. I invite everybody. You don't have to give like a whole session like I gave now. You can just give like a 5-minute, a 10-minute. You can show us some pictures of where your travels were. Everyone, would like to see and hear what some stories are. Some people want to tell stories of doing like certain treks that they've done. Maybe some people want to talk about like volunteering in Israel or in other places. Maybe people want to say their first job that they had in a foreign country, or their first job in South Africa, what an internal travel that was. I invite anyone to just share, whichever lessons you want. Those are some things. Now I have one other story. So I'll tell you what I'm going to do. Should I cut it here or should I tell one more story? I'm going to let everyone, whoever wants to leave, can leave. Okay, Paul, including you. If you want to stop the recording, you can. I'm going to tell one last story because I don't think I'm going to tell more stories in this. And should I tell one more story, guys? Give me thumbs up or thumbs down if people had enough. I'm seeing one or two. Okay, I'm seeing one or two. So whoever, I won't take it personally ever if anybody leaves. Okay, so that was the session. I had 4 stories. So I'll give one more. Okay, so this is also in California, and it's not really my story. It's my friend's story, but I was there. So I'll just tell you. There's a Russian proverb that says, and maybe I'll share my screen at this point, just so you can see some of the quotes that I had. Which I love these quotes because they all travel quotes and they all have some truth. So there was the one, not all those who wander are lost. And that was my experience with the Hasidim. This was the one, here was the one that we said, travel is fatal to prejudice, bigotry, and narrow-mindedness. That was Mark Twain. This one, we travel not to escape life, but for life not to escape us. I love that one. The Buddha, that's the one I just quoted, it's better to travel well than to arrive. And then the last 2 that I had was the bottom right. I would rather own a little and see the world than own the world and see little of it. Just to let you know, I had to sell everything that I owned when I went traveling in order to travel. I didn't have spare money and I sold my couches, my beds, whatever I had in my apartment. I was just renting, but whatever I had, I sold in order to go traveling. The last one I'm focusing is in this one. It's a Russian proverb. It's better to see something once than to hear about it 100 times. Okay, Russian proverb. The Russians are always too deep, okay? Very deep Russians. Whoever's got Russian stock, Lithuania, Latvia, Belarus, most of us, okay? Very serious, very intellectual, okay? I don't know if most of you know. I'm sure you do. I'm sure you realize how smart your parents and grandparents were. But, the ancestry that I come from, and I'm sure most of you come from, was very, deep. Like, even the Russian novels, like Dostoevsky and stuff, it's like a whole different ball game. Leo Tolstoy, different ball game of like depth and seriousness and intensity. Okay, so this is that Russian proverb. It's better to see something once than to experience it once than to see it 100 times. So I met a friend it was actually at a Jewish festival. You don't have these in South Africa, but it was called Jewlicious. It's for young adults in the Southern California area. And, it was a very, very cool festival. Whoever knows like the Jewish world, I met a very famous Jew. I would venture to say one of the most famous Jews in the world today. He's a musician. He's the most famous Jewish musician that I know of, who made it in my time. His name's Matisyahu. And Matisyahu, we're talking about a guy who fills stadiums with 50,000 people himself. And yeah, very, very famous guy. He was a Lubavitch, Jew who became, I think, non-Lubavitch or whatever the case is. I met him at this festival. And since then, I sat next to him quite a few times in shul, spoke to him quite a lot. Amazing to have like a superstar who comes to the minyan and you wish him good Shabbos. Okay, anyway. So at this festival, I met another person who's one of the most enigmatic human beings I've ever met. So he never went to college, this particular man. He's 1 or 2 years older than me, but he was a surfer, a Southern California surfer, pretty much from birth. Now, Allison, your brother's a surfer. Matter of fact, I surfed with him today. So I realized what a surfer looks like coming from New Zealand. And I absolutely love your brother, as you know. This person was a very different picture of a surfer in Southern California. He was the extreme version of surfing. What does this extreme version of surfing in Southern California mean? Well, obviously he was a professional at the age of 50, professional surfer on the circuit, but he left it because he thought that the money in the surfing took away from the connection to God that surfing naturally is. This is a Shomer Shabbos, extremely devout Jew that I'm talking about. Not Hasidic, not ultra-Orthodox, never versed. I think he was a high school dropout, never went to any, particular schools, broken Hebrew reading. But yes, Shomer Shabbat, kosher, etc., etc. So he, to take it to the extreme, he once told me that when he was like 21, there was a hurricane at sea in California, and he paid a tugboat, because you couldn't go in a small boat. He paid a tugboat to take him and a friend, just them on the tugboat with their boards. And they just jumped out in the middle of the ocean off a tugboat in 60-foot swell. Okay, if you can picture what 60-foot swell is. Now, the largest swell in the world is 90 feet. This was 60-foot swell. And he said that at a certain point, he fell off his board and he woke up 4 hours later on the beach. And he managed to find somewhere. Turns out the Coast Guard had reported him missing 4 hours earlier. That's how he knew that he was missing for 4 hours. And he somehow survived. He washed up onto shore. So that's the extreme big wave surfing at a young age, Southern California, religious Jew that I'm talking about. Southern California, whoever's from there now, interesting characters you meet there. Okay, so I went with this person on a road trip to Northern California. Now, most people know Yosemite National Park, but if you continue going north in California, it just gets more and more beautiful. I know that everybody likes to go to Southern California, which is Los Angeles, San Diego, Santa Barbara. Maybe they'll make it to Central California, San Luis Obispo. A lot of people will also go to the bottom of Northern California, San Francisco, but not a lot will go beyond that. But to me, that's the most impressive, at least naturally impressive part of the state. So this is that part of the state. We went to a place called Lassen National Park. And close to Lassen National Park, there are these huge waterfalls, which if I was to guess, I'd bet them at about anywhere between 25 to 40 meters. It's hard for me to judge, but somewhere around that point, huge waterfalls. And there's an overlook where you look at these waterfalls, and I'm looking at these beautiful waterfalls, taking pictures. And I see this, I'm taking a photo, and there's another, 50 people. It's an iconic destination. People are looking at this waterfall. And again, in the corner of my eye, I see this person. Let's just call him Yerachmiel. I see this person, Yerachmiel, climb over the barricade of the overlook and walking along the mountain surface. I'm like, Yerachmiel, what are you doing? It's like, don't worry, don't worry. And he walks along this barricade. It takes him about 15 minutes. And everyone's watching him. What is this crazy man doing? At a certain point, he's against the rock face like this. Like moving like this along the wall. Like that, for 15 minutes. And everyone sees him, and he goes to the source of the waterfall. And there's a 25 to 40 meter drop to the rock pool below. And everybody's going, is he actually going to jump? Is this guy crazy? Is he crazy? Is he going to jump? And I'm like, they're looking at me because some people saw that I was with this person. Most people, knew they haven't seen it because it's taken 15 minutes for him to get there. And I'm like, I don't know what to do, what not to do. I definitely can't get there. I would not even risk going 2 minutes into walking that little, rock face. He's done it for 15 minutes. Everyone's looking at him. He's got 50 people. Now, by the time he's there must be 100 people looking there going, what is this guy going to do? Is he trying to kill himself? Is he, and I'm starting to get worried. All of a sudden, I see Yerachmiel jump. And he doesn't jump. He jumps and does a somersault in the air and lands perfectly like an Olympian with his head first after doing a somersault mid-air into this thing. And my heart sunk. I wasn't sure if this person who I was with, who's a friend, had survived or not survived. I don't know what was there. Are there rocks? Are there not rocks? We're talking a massive 25 to 40 meters. You can picture that in your mind. Whoever's ever jumped off a 10-meter board, you'll know how big that is. This is 3 times, if not 4 times that. And he comes up to the top, and I see him, and I'm like, Rachmiel, why? Why not? Why not? That was his answer. Why not? And I just want to share with that. I don't think this is a way to live. It's not a way to live. Whoever is listening to this on YouTube, I definitely do not recommend anyone ever to do such a thing. But I will say that Yerachmiel completely crushed my understanding of faith, because Yerachmiel believes in God like you believe that there is something in your refrigerator right now. Matter of fact, he might believe in God more than you believe that there's something in your refrigerator right now. And that is a lesson in faith, of which, there's a psalm which we recite sometimes. I mean, there's a lot of similar psalms. Even though I walk through the dark valley or the shadow of death, or however a psalm says it at different chapters, I will not be afraid because you, God, are with me. Now, I'm not trying to say that you should have faith enough and not be afraid that you should do some stupid things like Yerachmiel did, which is either going into the sea into 60-foot swell, or alternatively jumping into, 40-meter jumps, which you've never done before, and doing somersaults. But at the same time, there is a certain lesson of faith and trust and the strength that a human being can get to, whereby your scope of living and life can increase multiple times of what is possible for you to do with faith and trust. And that's the message that I want to share with you. Not to do things that are life-threatening, because that I don't think is a good idea. But thank God, Yerachmiel is still alive, and he got married, and he's got a child, and thank God. I hope he's tapered down a little bit now that he's a father. I haven't been in touch with him for quite a while. But the main idea being is that the power that faith can give you, faith that you can be a millionaire if you want to be a millionaire, faith that you can be a billionaire if you want to be a billionaire, faith that you can marry the person of your dreams, faith, whatever the case is, if you can work on that, I do believe that it can get you very, very far. And I saw that with my own eyes with Yerachmiel, to do things that I didn't think a human being can do. So those are 4 stories, each with their own message. And sometimes, some of them you might disagree with me on the message. Some of them, you might have your own message to take to yourselves. But that was just food for thought from travel stories, which I think is about life, about Torah, about the things that grow us as human beings. And everybody is a traveler, either internal or external. So everybody should have a story. It's just a case of, would you like to share your story? So don't feel the pressure from me, but for next week, I'm gonna, ask people, maybe we'll have 3 or 4 people to share, 1 or 2 stories, which they can share, and please feel free to share some of those pictures with the audience as well. Thanks, everybody. Stay healthy. You can say, I'm going to unmute everybody. You can unmute yourselves and you can say hello to everybody. I'm not going to be able to say hello to everybody, but, I see Mervyn, Gerald, Neil, I think Abe's or Paul's there. Shirley, Marilyn, I see. Jean, Allison, Claire, I don't see, but I see your name. Ruth, Nan, my dad, Alfonso, Monica, John Brandon, Gilda, good to hear from you as well. Gerald, Marcus, Jen, good to see you again. If I've left out anybody's names, I apologize. It doesn't come up on my screen. Thank you for being here. Thank you for traveling with me in the last hour. And I look forward to travel with you the next 4 sessions as well. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Stay well.